Hello everyone, my name is Adrian Markish and I'm the publisher and editor of ModernAnalyst.com, the premier online community for business analysts. I would like to welcome you to today's webinar titled Enhancing Business Process Management with Business Rules. Today's featured speaker is Richard Lagarwi, Principal Consultant with FICO. The webinar would last approximately 60 minutes including a Q&A session. So make sure to submit your questions in advance using the questions feature of the webinar software. I would like to say thank you to FICO for sponsoring this event. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to Richard to get us started.
Adrian, thank you very much for the introductions and welcome everybody. Welcome everybody from all over the world. My name is, as Adrian already indicated, Richard Lagarwi. I'm based in the Netherlands and I'm working for FICO for over 10 years. And in my day-to-day job, I help clients from all over the world addressing their business challenges and technical challenges. And in a number of those projects, we apply our business rules management technology in combination with the business process management systems. And that's where we're going to talk about in today's session. How can we improve those processes? The agenda for today. First, we will talk about the need for business agility. We will then follow the business rules approach and talk about a couple of examples where we have put the business rules management systems into action. We will close today's session with some observations and lessons learned from the field about separating business process management from business rules management systems. And if time permits, we will have some time to answer your questions. But let's get started with the concept of agility. Agility has been a very popular buzzword in today's world, and I will get started with a definition of agility. According to Wikipedia, agility is the capability of rapidly and cost-effectively adapting to change. Is this something new? I don't think so. If we take a look at the work at Charles Darwin and take a look at his quotes, then he is saying that it's not the strongest of the species that will survive, nor the most intelligent ones, but the ones that are most responsive to change. And that matches very well with our definition of agility. I already put up another quote from a famous sports coach and presenter, Lou Holtz, who said, "Life is 10% what happened to you, but 90% how you actually responded to it." So let's take a look in our day-to-day life. And in FICO, we serve a number of organizations in the financial services and insurance industry. And we often have to help our clients in agility, and we need to support them in the business challenges. So let's take two real-world cases. And the first one is about an organization that is accepting loans from their customers. As you know, organizations are striving towards processing as many credit applications via straight-through processing as possible. Either give an automatic accept or an automated decline. However, in a number of cases, they still need to review those credit applications on a manual basis. The challenge is always, what can we automatically accept and what do we need to refer and what do we automatically send towards the decline. And especially this group of referrals is very difficult to manage. So let's think about it. If you need to make a decision, what group you need to send into the referral state, and you control the business logic. If it takes you 3 hours to change the logic, or if it will take you 3 months. Most likely the response is if you can change the logic that drives the decision if it goes into a referral or an automated decision, is that you will challenge and try to optimize and play with the parameters to find the optimal business rules to actually drive the decision to go into an automated decision or to go to a decline. So the more flexibility you will have to drive the decisioning, the better it is. Another example. A number of our clients are applying predictive models in their day-to-day business processes. Predictive models are built on historical data, and building a model typically takes between 10 and 15 weeks. So we queried our clients and asked them, how long does it typically take when we have built a model for you to put it into production? And we were surprised that for 50% of the companies, it took longer than 3 months to actually put the model into production. And you need to be aware that the model is most accurate at the time that it is being developed. It starts to lose its precision over time, and typically the models are being refreshed or updated after 1 or 3 years. So it is surprising that 25% of the organizations, it took longer than 9 months to actually deploy and activate those models. And these are examples of agility. The quicker you can actually respond to the requested changes, the better it is. So what is being said about this by industry analysts? So this quote is from Gartner. The increased emphasis on business agility is driving many organizations towards business rules engines and business rules technology, among other agility-focused technologies. So again, we see a strong focus on agility, and I'm not saying that business rules engines and business rules management systems are the only solution towards improving the agility. There's a whole range of technologies, but as is being identified by Gartner, this type of technology does definitely help a number of organizations. As a company that is providing this type of technology, we of course have a list of criteria that we typically see with organizations that are interested in this type of technology. These are as the questions that we ask ourselves when we are being invited, and we try to identify the issues that those clients are facing. So please have a look at these items listed here and see which ones are relevant for your businesses. Because the more of these are relevant, the more applicable the business rules technology will be for your organization. So we see this technology being applied in organizations that are operating in a heavily regulated environment. Traditionally, these are banks, but nowadays it's also in insurance, telecommunications, and the government industry. Organizations that need to implement a lot of business policies and procedures that need to be more frequently updated. An example is a mobile operator and an insurance company that offer a different type of offerings to the marketplace based on existing components and elements, and they often need to change some parameters either in the pricing structure or in the offering to be made, and they can come up with new products. Business rules management technology together with business process management technology really help these organizations to get agility and to go to the marketplace more quickly with these new offerings. Organizations that have consistency concerns, how to make sure that the same logic is being applied and the same answers are being provided over the various channels. The next ones are often related to each other. An IT organization that has a significant backlog to get changes into a production environment is often linked with an objective from the business department to get more control over the business logic. Often they need to apply small changes which are taking a long period of time to get them in production. And a business is saying, is there an option that we can actually take control over those small parameter changes, freeing up time towards the IT department so that they can actually focus on the larger changes and the larger programs that need to be implemented, and don't need to worry about small rule changes in the production system. What are the today's trends that we actually see happening? And again, hopefully these apply also apply into your business, and you'll recognize these elements. So what we see here is that in today's world, the systems need to be more scalable. There's more demand for performance, and often the number of changes to be applied in the system is going up. On the other hand, we have less time to deliver, the resources start to become rare, and we have a shortage on skills. So how do we in the IT world actually survive? I made this joke about agility, where we're saying that according to Darwin, we are able to improve ourselves, and that the species that have the best chance of surviving are the ones that are able to improve themselves. So here in this slide, I'm giving an overview of what has happened in our world, in the IT world. So back in the early years, we had large machines that had to be programmed via hardware configuration, and over time we moved towards more modern software environments. So in the 50s we had the assemblers and the third generation languages, and we moved towards object-oriented concepts and case tools. Again, we continue to improve ourselves, and what you see happening in the last 10 years is that we are separating out and creating different layers and components that are actually working with each other. We're starting to break down the complexity of the overall system in smaller and more manageable pieces, which will actually bring me to my layer cake. And you will see my layer cake coming back in different flavors later on in the presentation. So what we nowadays do as a recipe to build modern IT systems is that we have different layers. At the bottom we have the operating system and the platform layer that is being stacked up with the data management layer or the databases, followed by the gray layer where we talk about the business logic or the rules. The rules are then being utilized in processes, and we serve the processes to the outside world and to the inside world and other systems using services. We can actually say that that in today's world we are using components together with tools. And components can be database management systems, enterprise resource planning systems, etc. And the tools are the elements that we actually use to glue it together. It can be traditional programming tools, but it can also be scripting languages and other elements that we use to let the systems communicate and talk with each other. So moving from our layer cake and our recipe to break the complexity, I will move into a slightly different view of today's systems. This comes close to the recommendations that we are already, that you will be reading in magazines and getting from analysts, which we are pushing out to the field as well. So what you see here on this slide is that we have different operating systems and platform components, and one is actually providing the data, and the data is being published via services. And on the left side we see the process flow that is being exposed by services, and the process itself utilizes the rules, and the rules are being used and published and made available, uses the services concepts as well. So in the service-oriented architecture, we see the different services communicating with each other, and each of the components that are sitting between the green and the yellow layer is serving a specific purpose. Let's move on and talk a little bit more about what this business rules approach is actually about. As FICO, we are providing business rules management systems, and what we have seen over time is that these type of technologies are being applied in a wide range of decision areas, as we label them. So we see in here you see an overview of a number of areas where we have applied this technology. And this ranges from front-end systems like call center, data entry, towards more back-office oriented functions like fraud detection, claims processing, accounting and compliance, but also data validation, formatting, and problem resolution. Hopefully you will pick up some elements out of this long list that could be relevant in your industry or in the domain or company that you are working with. So a lot of people ask me the question, say, Richard, how would you classify business rules? What is your definition? And I typically say business rules are different for every organization. And think about it. Think about how you as an organization drive your business. And I typically give examples by talking with the people that make sense to them. So here you see a couple of
are rules that I've harvested, have identified from a car rental company, and I will just list them here as an example to identify how this company is doing their business. So cars should be checked on return from each rental and on transfer between the different branches. Another rule states that under any of the following conditions, the car should be checked for service or repair. And you see a number of conditions being listed that needs to be checked. Another rule talks about the charges that need to be applied that make up the total rental charge. You'll see that it is made up of different components. It's not a complex equation, but it is it's basically saying rental charge is made up out of these components. And there will be other rules that will be saying how the base rental price will be defined. And there will be a rule that specifies how the insurances can be identified and needs to be applied. So business rules, I would say, is the way that you as an organization are doing business. And often I bring in the different business specialists and the business people and let them explain how are you doing the business, and let's try to come up with statements like you're seeing here that can be understood both by the IT department and the business department and specifies how they as a company are doing business. Business rules are actually the assets, one of the key assets for you for the people in an organization that defines how they need to drive and do the business. So the business rules approach is where we are advocating and telling people that they should try and separate out the business rules from the operational processes. I often explain it as separating out the business logic from the procedural logic. In today's world, we often see that the rules are being implemented in code or are embedded in operational systems, and it's very hard to identify where the business logic is being defined and where procedural logic, like inserting records in a database or preparing data for reporting or specific elements in the IT organization, are taking place. So in the business rules approach, we say try to separate your business rules and the way you do the business from the operational logic. And do that not only in your documentation, but do that in your process definitions, in your use cases and system requirements. Start to pay a little bit more attention to your rules and see them as the assets of your organizations. The next advice that we give is when you define your business rules, make sure that they are defined in a declarative fashion. That means that changes in one rule should not require changes in another. You might recall the examples that we just provided for the car rental company. They were individual statements, and those individual statements were very easy to understand, and they were really based on themselves. They are small units that could be interpreted as a logical unit. The other important item that you see here on the slide is that rules should be order independent. It's actually the task of the engine that is executing the rules to identify what are all the relevant rules that need to be evaluated and executed at a given moment in time. When you start to work with your rules, then you need to make sure that you define them as granular and individual units as possible, and need to make sure that you logically group them together, but leave it up to the engine to determine what is the right order of execution. Moving on with our business rules approach. Like I said, start to pay a little bit more attention to your business rules. That is the key messaging that I would like to get across in this presentation. And what I typically do is that I ask the people that are not very familiar with the concept of rules, and I ask them, how do you actually treat data in your organization? And we all know that data today is really managed as a practice. Yeah, we have separated the processing of the data and the storage of the data towards databases. We have built a lot of functionality and management around managing the data. We have DBAs, we have infrastructure, and it's nowadays a common practice to treat data separate from the procedural logic and the operational business logic. So we say do the same thing with business rules. Compare it with the object orientation. Yeah, objects, as most of the people will know, encapsulate data and behavior. We're already doing a great job today in treating the data well. Yeah, we separate them out. We store them separately. We have separated the data definition from actual data storage, etc. Let's start to do the same thing with the behavior, with the methods and the business logic that you are applying. That's what we are trying to achieve using the business rules approach. I already listed earlier in the presentation a number of criteria that we see why organizations start to contact us as a trigger to introduce the concept of business rules management system or business rules into their systems. Here I've listed them again at a slightly higher level. So centralization and standardization of the rule execution in management is a common theme. So what we are proposing here is to separate out the business logic from the operational logic, store it in a separate place like you're doing on the data side, and start to treat them in the central manner. Very similar as you're doing on the data side. So you have a database platform these days where multiple databases will be running on your database management system. Try to visualize the same thing with respect to your business rules. You have a common platform where you store and manage your business rules, but there will be separate instances. For example, in a financial institute, we can have one place where we define the rules with respect to customer treatment. We have another place where we actually define the pricing of the various products. And another place we have the definitions on how we need to treat the clients that are actually not paying their obligations, where we talk about the collection side. Once we start to manage all of those rules as assets in the management system, it starts to become easier from a regulatory perspective because we can explain how the rules are being defined and we can explain how they are being defined and managed. And it becomes easier to actually manage and update the rules because we can give access to the rules to the relevant people that have authorizations to either monitor or adjust those rules. It also becomes easier to actually combine rules of those different definitions and apply them across multiple channels. And that's what we actually see in item number 2. So historically, a lot of business logic or business rules were implemented in the actual channels. And that resulted in a big maintenance challenge for organizations to keep the logic that was being applied by the various channels consistent. How did they guarantee that you could get the same offering or the same pricing structure when you came in via the web channel or using the call center? What we are saying here is try to separate the business logic, store it in a central fashion, and make sure that the channels are contracting the central decision engine where the uniquely defined business logic is being applied. That actually helps in increasing the consistency and making sure that the same responses are being provided. I already talked about item number 3, where we could allow the business people to actually control what rules are being executed. In an enterprise setup, we would like to control which person can actually make changes to the rules, and we also would like to make sure that they get an environment to manage those rules that is targeted to their environment. Again, I like to make the analogy to the database world. People in a good enterprise setup, the business people are not making changes to the data directly in the tables itself. They don't perform insert or update record type operations. No, they have a management environment, a fed client or a web client interface, for example in a CRM system, where they can modify client data. Why are we doing it from a data perspective and not from a business logic perspective? Again, we would like to educate the people that it makes perfect sense to empower the business users not only to control the data, but to give the right people in the business department also access to update the relevant parameters of their business logic. Try to give them ownership and responsibility for the business logic that is driving their day-to-day business. And the fourth one is to allow more complex processes to be automated. We are working with a number of organizations where we got started by replicating their current business processes into a business rules management system. Once it was in place, the business people were actually able to improve their strategies or improve their business processes and actually start to test and improve them using simulation capabilities or what-if analysis, and could make significant improvements before they actually store them, activated them in the day-to-day processes. So this type of technology also enables your business owners to improve their business rules or their strategies on a go-forward basis. So a number of people have joined today's session, and I think a lot of organizations have already adopted more or less to the concept of business rules. So the slide that I brought up here identifies level 0 up to level 5 on a maturity level. And by the end of today's session, the people that are still on, I'm pretty sure that they moved at least from level 0 to level 1. And most likely, we can trigger you to move from level 1 towards level 2 to see how business rules management systems could actually help. You'll see that organizations that are, once they have adopted to this type of technology, start to extend the use and start to improve the business rules by either using expertise that they have in their organizations by the business people, or alternatively, they can start to adopt analytics or other type of technology, optimization technology, to improve their business rules and business processes. Level 4 is where we start to predict and where we start to really control the business rules and put the business rules in a very central position. And you see the optimal stage in level 5, where we have separated all of the business rules and we are driving the organization based on the actual business rules that we have in the organization. So hopefully this level 0 up to level 5 helps you to identify where you are as an organization, to do some tests, to check where you are, but also to have discussions with your colleagues and your peers to identify where do we actually want to be as an organization in the near future and the longer term future, and where do we think that our competitors will be located. The next slide is our architecture blueprint for adoption of business rules management systems. I can talk at length about this slide. I'm not going to do that. I try to keep it short. But what this slide shows is the diamond in the middle. And the diamond in the middle is where we actually execute the business rules. You will see that on the right side we have our traditional systems, and those traditional systems are calling, you see completely on the right side, the different channels. The different channels communicate with the core operating processes like a CRM system, a billing system, etc. And what I just described is that we move the actual business rules outside the operational systems and put them under the control of the business rules management system. So the various requests to make a decision are being submitted to the diamond in the middle, and we label that as a decision request. The actual decision is being identified by the rules and feedback to the operational systems. While we are making decisions, we are capturing the data, and you will see that we can apply some decision analysis, and via the operational data store and data warehouse, we are feeding it back to our learning environment and management environment, development and management environment. In there we have a separate environment where we actually store and manage the rules and where we do the improvement of the business rules. So this is really a setup where we have separated the management of the rules and improvement of the rules from the operational execution of the rules. And by separating them, we create an environment where we can improve the rules over time in a controlled fashion. So the central rule and model repository you see in the middle provides things like versioning, simulation capabilities, so that we have a controlled environment where the business owners can play with the rules and improve the rules, test the rules before they are put into production in this blue diamond in the middle. And that's really the architecture blueprint that we are pushing forward towards organizations that would like to apply this concept of business rules-driven automation in their systems. So how has it been applied by organizations? And I actually have two examples. The first example you see here on the screen is from a health insurance organization where we have helped to move the business rules that were deeply embedded in their operational systems and separated. We moved them from the operational system and started them to put on the control in the business rules management system and automate in the rule server. So this system that you will see is connected to the service bus and is receiving various requests, and that remains the same as it already was in that organization. However, we removed the logic that was in that system, the core business rules, and run those by the rule server so that we have more flexibility to actually make changes to that logic and improve it and increase the consistency. So what were the challenges that this organization was facing and why did they opt for this type of technology? This organization, the key challenge that this organization had, you will see it as the third item in this slide, challenges. This organization had to double their volume of insured clients, and they should stick with the same budget that they had available for running their business. They, at the time that we started to work with them, they had a lot of manual interventions, and they had a lot of expertise in the personnel and trained personnel, but they had challenges in actually scaling up because there was so much manual work to be done, and as an effect of the manual work, there was consistency and there were procedures, but there were a lot of interpretation differences between the experts, which resulted in a lack in consistency and also a lack in response. So they were unable to provide the responses in time what was expected by the clients. So what we did is we worked with this organization and captured the logic that was already, the business logic that was already in the system, as well as the logic that was in the brains of the business analysts that were actually driving the day-to-day work, and automated that using business rules. And we made sure that the experts were really able to adjust the logic over time. So we were not saying we get it right at once, but we would like to give you, the experts, the ability to improve the logic that needs to be applied over time. We actually activated and made it operational in a service-oriented architecture using the web services. So the benefits that we have seen in this organization is that we could improve the strategies, and because the majority of the decisioning is now driven in an automated fashion using the same expertise or the same logic, we could dramatically increase the consistency as well as the speed to provide a resolution or provide a response to the client. And from a cost perspective, we were able to process a much larger volume, and this solution also provides them the right level of scalability so that they can adapt to a larger client base on a go-forward basis. The next example is an organization that adapted to a services bus, and they actually applied a business rules hub where the rule server is acting like a policy engine. So what this organization did is they adopted to the concept of business rules and created an environment where business people could deploy new sets of rules and define new sets of rules and make them available over the services bus by the various business process environments that they had in place. So they adopted to the concept of rules, and they were able to scale it up pretty quickly. This was actually within a financial services organization in Europe that wanted to expand their operations in China. So the largest operation they were serving around 10 million clients, and they wanted to support another 10 million clients in China in the next couple of years. So the challenge that they had was that they had no good understanding how to serve the market in China. They had some good expertise in Russia and said, let's get started with the business strategies and the business policies that we have applied in China. But we want to be able to update those strategies in a matter of days. If it is not working, we just want to improve it and see what the effect is with respect to the acceptance ratio from the clients and if the clients want to buy into that. So what we have done there is that we used business rules technology to build a framework, and that framework was initially configured to support two regions, two countries. And over time, the organization was able to utilize the framework and configure it themselves for another 6 countries where they went into operation. The challenge that they gave to us was we want to be able to update our business strategies and have it tested and approved and operational in less than 48 hours. They actually said we want to do it in 24 hours, but we gave them the advice, please, you need to make sure that you have the right approval process in place, so aim for 48 hours. What we have seen and the feedback that they shared with us was that they were able to actually test and approve changes in the turbulent marketplace twice a day, so twice in 24 hours, which was pretty impressive. A number of organizations ask us, is this type of technology able to deliver the speed, or is it able to handle the volumes that we are seeing as an organization based on our client base? And this client actually is scoring their clients. And historically, they were calculating risk indicators for the clients on a weekly basis. And one of the objectives that I had was to move from a batch-oriented nature, where they were doing it once a week, towards a more flexible calculation. So if something changed in the behavior of the client, they want to be able to update the risk indicators for that particular client. That had as a result that they had to calculate much more risk indicators for their clients, because some of their clients had updates in their profiles on a daily basis. So instead of scoring those clients once a week, they had to be scored on a daily basis. So they had a strong focus on performance. And what we have seen is that we were able to score millions of customers, and in their case, they in peak times, we score something like 3.5 million clients a day, and we are always able to get those processed in the batch window that we have received for 3 hours. And we are not using a massive IT setup for this. It's just a standard Windows PCs with a couple of CPUs. So this type of technology has proven itself and is able to process large volumes of transactions. Hopefully those 2 examples gave you some insight in what we have done with our clients and what were the drivers why clients have opted for this type of technology. So I would like to finish the sessions and move to the Q&A session. But before doing that, I would like to share some lessons learned and best practices that we have seen from the field by driving the agility, by managing business processes separate from the rules process. So here I come back with my colored circles with respect to rules process. So the yellow circles indicate what is typically happening in an organization, and most likely in your organization as well. So there is a strategy. Somebody has an idea to change the way you're doing business. Typically, strategy changes happens at the C-level or at the operational, the director's level that set the business policies. They force policy changes or updates to the policies, And you'll see that the government, the governance and the regulators have a strong influence on the policy and the policy rules that need to be applied as well. So that provides input towards our business processes. And what I already said, we see the business processes consuming and putting things into action using the business rules. So if we need to compare the business rules and the BPM systems, then I've provided a kind of list here. So the business process management really focuses on how do we do things. It standardizes the process and defines how it needs to be carried out. The rules really focus on the operational decisions. What should the decision making be based on? What are the information elements and how does that result in the decision to be made? The BPM really focuses on collaboration and compliance, whereas the rule systems focus on decision making, automation, and making sure that we have a consistent process for maintaining the business rules. BPM focuses on workflow and management, on the process automation, the monitoring as exceptions, and on the reports and integration broker to make sure that all the different systems can communicate with each other. Business rules focus on the assets, on the way you do your business. So it helps to automate the processing as quickly as possible, and it acts like a decision broker. How to liberate the business rules from your processes, how to free them. What we would advise is to define the rules very, very clearly. The BRMs, the business rules management systems, handle the decision making and need to take care of the maintenance of the business rules. The process management systems are focusing in transforming the decisions into actions. So typically we see that the BPM is collecting a number of decisions and then routing them, distributing them to the different systems that actually need to make an action on it. So a decision comes in and it needs to, for example, put it in a working queue for an analyst to work on, or perhaps it needs to generate a report or send it to some place to insert or to do something with it. Actually, the service-oriented nature of the modern technologies of BPM and business rules management actually make it simpler from an IT perspective. The business rules management systems, like the ones that FICO and other parties provide, are designed to deploy the rules as a service. And the business process management systems are actually designed to invoke those services, invoke web services, and distribute some of the processing and decision making to other systems. A simple analogy, and all these analogies and examples are there to help you in getting a clearer understanding what do we position in the BPM domain and what do we position in the business rules management domain. So I would like to declare and define the business rules management system as the brain. It doesn't do anything, your brain. It sits there, and when it receives signals, then and the signals provide the relevant data, it will make a decision. It is getting colder. And a few examples, it's getting colder. I just turned the air conditioning on, so yeah, that's a logical result that it's getting colder. It's getting colder, and here in the Netherlands it's getting dark. So perhaps I need to put in a jumper or I need to get a jacket because it's getting the end of the day and I need to get prepared that it is getting colder, which is not a natural reaction, but it comes into different actions. The BPM is the nervous system. It carries the information to the brain, and the brain does the processing. It applies the rules, and the output, the actions, are being distributed by the BPM system. So to compare that with today's world, I see the BPM as the routers that provides the documents from the different places, the different departments, to the actual brains, and the brains is where you apply your business logic and where you make the decisions. So to come back to our example, is if it's getting colder and getting dark, go to the closet, pick the black jacket because it matches well with your dress, and put it on. So the key question is, why are organizations separating it? And one of the questions you might have is, do we need to consider separating the business rules in one of our future projects? So what are the risks of running, of doing BPM without a business rules management system? What we have seen is that the business process management is typically addressing it at a higher level, and the business rules are focusing on a more detailed level. And it's very natural in a project to really focus at the high level first and then drill down to the more detailed elements once it needs to be filled in and colored in. The typical result is that when a project comes under time pressure, that the business rules become some sort of an afterthought, that they don't get the attention that it would actually deserve. Another observation is that once you go for a combined BPM and BRM approach, is that the rules are buried in the overall process, and that the process by itself becomes more and more complex, and that it is not only defining the process and the orchestration, how information needs to be routed, but also has information on the decisions and actions that need to take place. What can happen is that the inconsistency of business rules can happen, especially when the business rules are implemented in other channels and other systems as well. And non-compliance is something that has happened with organizations that are operating in a regulatory environment. And we have seen it in the financial services sector that the rules, the organizations didn't pay a lot of attention to the rules in the BPM systems, which resulted in fines. So what we would suggest is separate the BPM with the BRM system, which will simplify both the processes and will provide more manageability for the rules. So what are the typical benefits when they are being separated? So I talked a lot about the high-level benefits, and often we are being brought in and to have a discussion. Okay, we understand the story that you are saying here, and it makes sense for us, and it's something that we would consider. But do you have some real-world results? And in the two cases that are provided, we already highlighted some of the business results that an organization has seen. But I'm glad that the strategic focused research company did do an investigation on a project. And what I found out is that by a combined BPM-BRM approach, they were able to save 38% on the efforts in comparison with a traditional implementation project. And what I noticed that on a go-forward basis, that they could save roughly 60% on the efforts to make changes. And I need to be honest, these numbers make sense to me. And what we see when we are talking purely about business rules management system is that this percentage is often slightly higher as well as being shared by the client. So I feel comfortable with the numbers that are being shared here, and they are aligned with what we see with our clients. So hopefully this information is helpful for you to have arguments when you are being involved in discussions next time, if it makes sense to go with a combined BPM, BRM, or to go with the traditional development approach. So hopefully the information that I shared today was helpful and made it clear what the role of business rules management systems and business rules are. Like I said a numerous times in today's presentation, business rules are a key asset of your organization, and please treat them as assets. And do the same thing with rules on the longer term as what we have been doing with data. Try to separate them out of the logic and try to store them in a manageable fashion where either IT or the business owners can take control of it. So I can imagine that this presentation resulted in a number of questions, and we will go in the Q&A quickly. But if you want to have more information, I would like to invite you either to the FICO World, which is an event that's going to take place in April 13 to 16, which is particularly relevant for organizations that operate in the retail banking and insurance industry, which are the core industries that FICO is operating in. But the technology that we provide is being used in a number of industries as well. And even if you're in those industries, please take a look at the FICO website. And if you want to hear more about the technology or our concepts and how we address those, you will see other events like webinars like this or roadshows, training, etc. in FICO.com events. We also have a community where organizations can ask questions and discuss the use of the technology and the concepts, and that's decisions.fico.com. Of course, you're always allowed to send me an email. My name is Richard Lagerwij, and you'll see my email address here. I'm based in the Netherlands and serving the EMEA region, and you can use the info@fico.com if you want to receive general information. With that, I would like to open the floor to questions. And what I will do is I will take a look in the queue with questions and pick some relevant questions out of the list that are being posted. So one of the questions here is, on the clients where you have implemented this, how did they perform testing of the business rules that they implemented in the system? Which is a good question. So what we are advocating here, Joseline, is that we like to give power to the business owners to make changes to the system, but we also educate them that getting the power to make changes also come with a responsibility. And that responsibility is that you need to test the rules. So what we have been doing over time is that we have extended the level of testing that can be applied in isolation before the rules go into the live environment. So we have introduced the concept of BR unit, which stands for Business Rules Unit Testing. And those rules, we advise to define them together with the actual rules definition itself. So at the time that you define the rules, think about how does this rule need to be tested. And hopefully you are familiar with the concept of unit testing, but they are often used for regression testing, and you have a predefined outcome based on the data that you are sending into your test case. So they can be very simple tests, but a number of our organizations submit a large portion of data into their strategy, and they will say the outcome needs to be plus or minus 3% of the previous strategy. And if that's the case, then the unit test is being passed. If that's not the case, then at least a signal is being flagged to the person that needs to authorize it. So that's one element of testing that we really are pushing for the business people to start thinking of. The testing where they are more familiar with is what we would classify as simulation or what-if analysis. So that's where they can test a strategy or where they can test the business rules and can actually compare the outcome of one version of the business rules with the outcome of another set of business rules. And typically they use different data sets. So they use the data sets of last month's transactional data, or they use some worst case scenario to see what the impact is going to be. And we then calculate a number of key performance indicators that helps an organization to make a decision. Did this change that we apply result in the objectives that we had in making this change? So hopefully this gave some input in what we would advise in how to test these rules. So there were some issues with respect to the audio, so that are easy questions to skip. What are the various latency issues that are faced with real-time systems versus back-end processing systems? That was a question from Hitendra. So latency typically depends on the network, and once the request is being picked up by the business rules engine, the business rules engine starts to process the information and provides a response. And like I said during the presentation, the response is provided very, very quickly. So depending on what the performance objectives are, the system can be put in different execution modes. So there are execution modes that are really optimized in handling large volume of objects and finding the optimized execution path for complex rules. And if you use that mode, then we typically talk about execution times between 20 to 50 milliseconds. And if you are going for really the fastest performance and you need to process a large volume of data, a good example is this case that I described for this Russian bank that had to score 3.5 million clients. That's where we would opt for what we name a compiled execution mode, where the rules are being compiled to either Java bytecode or the CLR in a .NET environment. And in there we see responses where it takes less than a millisecond to actually get a response. And in there we are able to process really thousands of transactions per second on a single box. And we have done scalability tests there, so you can really get good performance. With respect to latency, yeah, it really depends how long it takes to get that information to the rules engine and the type of technology that's being applied and used there. Another question, what happens when the folks doing the hands-on work processing accounts see the business rules in a different manner that of how management see the rules who are moved from the daily processes? That's a question from Randy. That's a very good question, Randy. So what we typically do is that we have a methodology how to actually implement those rules. And that methodology starts with, at the highest level, describe what are the decisions that need to be made. And then we start to drill down and fill in more of the details on how we actually come to that decision. And what we typically do is that we visualize those and that we request the executives to actually sign off, at least at the highest level. So to make sure that at the highest level, the way how we make the decisions has been agreed by both the operational level and the management level. Some of the details we try to get buy-in from the executives as well, but that's not always happening because it can become too detailed. But at the highest level, we really recommend to use visuals to make sure that we get buy-in from all the people, the relevant people in the organization. I noticed that there are a lot more questions, and what I will do is I'd like to give it back, the session back to Adrian, who's hosting this, to close it down. And what we will do is we will follow up with the relevant people that raise questions, and we'll make sure that you receive the relevant answers. So having said that, Adrian, over to you to close the session, please.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you again for everybody who attended this Modern Analyst webinar, and many thanks to Richard for the informative presentation. I wanted to point out that the webinar, along with the slides, will be archived at ModernAnalyst.com within a few days to give you a chance to review it, and if you want to pass it on to your colleagues or management. This concludes today's event. We hope you have a great day.